With the 2024 election only a few months away, it is important that we look at some other points of data as opposed to polls only. In this video, we're going to be discussing some of the voter registration data we have and comparing it to past registration. Not all states measure registration by party, and we have some lists here to show all the states that do measure them, and we're going to be putting this on a map and showing how important and how good these numbers look for Republicans and how bleak these numbers look for Democrats in comparison to poll numbers we received. Now, I recognize that this data is more reliable than polls because polls take into account only a small sample, and in recent polls with Trump and Kamala going head to head and with third parties included, we see an oversampling of Democrats. For example, in some recent polls released only a few days ago, we see that Democrats are oversampled by like 5 to 10 points, sometimes even more. Some polls may have a D+5 electorate, when in reality, Republicans are probably going to outnumber the Democrats in the popular vote margins. We might see something realistic like R+1 or R+2. And let's even be honest, we might see R+5 with the environment of how unpopular Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's administration has really been. And these polls aren't really showing that, and I don't know why the Democrat oversampling is going on to this extreme amount, and to still only have Harris up by a small amount means that something is going to happen much more or less different from the polls. We've been expecting the polls to be more accurate, but once again, we see it coming back to what it showed in 2020 and in 2016 when they got it extremely wrong and underestimated Donald Trump by huge amounts. Either way, let's get started on this, and we can see here the changes in July. So this is just July voter registration. Republicans have gained 252,000, and Democrats, have actually lost 19,800. This is completely opposite to polls that have been showing Democrats gaining in the past month or so, but these numbers are extremely bad for them. Let's take a look at some more specific numbers over here. We can see in Alaska, Republicans have gained more than Democrats. Democrats have gained to Arizona. This is a crucial state. Republicans gaining 20,000, Democrats only 3,000. Very big number here for California. Republicans have gained almost 100,000. Democrats have lost 43. In Colorado, one of the states where Democrats are going to be more favored, but still they have lost more than Republicans have. In Delaware, not really much change. In Florida, once again, Republicans have been building on their 1 million vote registration lead with gaining another 68,000. Democrats only gaining 22,000. Some other states here that are not too relevant. Iowa, not much has changed. And if we go down to the state of Nevada, we can see here Republicans once again gaining a lot more than Democrats this month. Also, let's take into consideration third parties have also been gaining a lot, but still not as much as Republicans. An important state, the state of North Carolina, Republicans gaining 6,200. Democrats actually losing. And this is a state that Trump must win. I want to take a look also at New Jersey, where Republicans have been 7 times more registries than Democrats. Same thing going to Pennsylvania, where we see 21,000 new Republican registers and 5,000 Democrat new. And Pennsylvania is one of those states where Republicans have really been eyeing down those registration numbers, and have been working really hard over the past few years to reduce that, and they have reduced it quite a considerable amount. And I'll show you guys on that 4-year difference on this next chart. And then the rest of these states are not going to really be competitive. But now moving on to this over here, we can see the registration for November 2020 and then for July 2024. So according to these numbers, what has been the change in this past 4 years per state? Going down to the total, we can see already Republicans have gained 400,000 new voters. Democrats have lost a whopping 3.5 million voters, and then all others have gained 1.8. So, where have these 3.5 million Democrats gone? I mean, I think most of them have either gone to all other or Republicans, or they just, didn't register as anything. They just left the Democratic Party as a whole. And we can see it's felt across, a lot of states by huge amounts. Let's take into consideration some of these states that Democrats really rely on that are not going to be too important, but is pretty considerable to look at. I mean, Arizona here, Republicans losing 53, Democrats losing 182. In California, Republicans gaining 148, Democrats 71. Another state, this is the state that I mentioned before, Colorado, where Democrats are doing a little bit better, but still not much of a difference. Now, Florida, which I mentioned how since 2020, Republicans have built up a 1 million vote lead. And we can see that here with Democrats losing almost 1 million voters, Republicans gaining 151. Iowa shows signs of a continued rightward trend, as well as all these other states that are not going to be closer. Maine over here, we can see this already shows it's going to be a little bit closer. Nebraska, this is important for that second district. The state of Nevada, where Democrats have lost 80, Republicans only lost 22. And we can see a huge jump in all others here. Independent voters, 259,000. In New Hampshire, I'm sure some of these voters are because of the primary, jumping from Democrat to Republican, but still we see a loss in everything in all three of those bars. In New Jersey, a state that we've also been talking about, which can get in that likely margin, this also proves the point of that being a possibility, where Republicans have gained 153,000 new voters, Democrats have lost a little bit, and then all others have also lost. New Mexico, and not much of a change. New York, another state we've mentioned, where Republicans have lost 49, Democrats have lost 410,000 voters. This is enough to eat away in that margin and make it a lot closer. North Carolina, we see a lot of Democrats voters have been leaving, switching to independent, while Republicans have also gained. Some other safer states here that are not worth mentioning. And then we get to the state of Pennsylvania, which we've been talking about how important this is. Republicans have stayed generally the same. Democrats have lost 329,000 voters, and this is really significant because the state of Pennsylvania had been decided by a very narrow margin of 1 percentage point. So this number right here would already eliminate that lead, a few times over even. And then finally, the rest of these states, pretty safe, but still, in total, Democrats losing 3.5 million voters is pretty considerable. And we could actually put that on a map right here, filling out some of these states. And we've left some of the states that are not going to really be, that do not register by their party, or that are not going to be really too safe at all. I mean, going down already to Oregon, California, states that will still be safe. But according to these numbers, Oregon should be a little more to the right, but the most important one, California, especially looking at these numbers for July, we can see here that a huge movement among Democrat to Republican. Still, however, I think this state will be safe for the Democrats. Now in Nevada, another state, the Republicans have been eyeing up now in this cycle quite considerably, and they've been leading a lot of these polls. It shows here that this registration lead has been destroyed for the Democrats. They've lost 80,000, and their lead in 2020 would be completely diminished. This is a big reason why I think the state will vote Republican. And Arizona, a state that has been trading to the left, but these numbers over here show otherwise, where Republicans have lost 50, Democrats have lost 182. Going to the numbers for July, where I expect coming now in August, September, a lot of these people are going to re-register. But looking at these numbers now, and these trends are going to continue in similar fashion. We see a 20,000 to 3,000 change, and that already is enough to flip the state, and already what I think will flip the state into that column for Republicans. Looking at Colorado, these numbers don't really indicate too much change. I do think this state will vote still a little bit to the right of 2020, but it's looking like a pretty safe state for Democrats. I'm going to put that in the likely column for that. Moving on now to New Mexico, where I see a little bit of a change to the right. I don't think as much as some people are thinking. The changes were pretty minor in July and pretty minor compared to 2020. I think this state will fall barely into that lean column. I think it'll go from D plus 11 to probably D plus 5 or 6, which would put it just shy of that likely margin. Iowa has solidified its status as a safe Republican state, especially after these numbers. Now, Iowa is not a big state. Let's remember, Iowa is not a big state at all. Only 6 electoral votes, and Democrats losing 74, Republicans losing 30 would, put it easily in that safe margin just from looking at that. I mean, there's also been no polls released, which has shown how safe this state has gone. Moving now to the state of Florida, a state that a lot of people have been talking about. I'm sure most of you already know how impactful this lead has grown, how much the Republican lead has grown. And this right here, I think, would easily put it in that likely margin without even taking polls into consideration. We don't even need to take those polls into consideration to show how much Republicans have been gaining on the Democrats. I mean, even the independents have been losing. Republicans have been the only party that's been gaining a considerable amount. I think Florida is a done deal for Democrats, and I think they shouldn't even be spending any money there in any races to begin with. North Carolina, another state that Republicans must win, and a state that's looking like Trump is gonna win. From these numbers, taking out the polling numbers, which also show him leading, we can see here Democrats losing 212,000, 221,000. A lot of these voters are ancestral Democrats that do still vote Republicans, and now we see a lot of them shifting, moving from Democrat to independent. And looking at the past month, we can see here Republicans also gaining another 6. Democrats continue to losing. I think Republicans will eventually pass Democrats in the registration gap that they hold. And this state will vote for Trump by probably margins closer to 2016, maybe a little bit more. I left Pennsylvania blank on this map because this is a very considerable number to look at, where Republicans gained 152,000 voters, Democrats losing. I think right here, this shows the state being a lot closer, maybe similar to those 2016 numbers. I think still a little bit to the right from that. I think this will be the year where New Jersey votes under 12 percentage points. The state of New York, which I also left blank, I think will still be in that safe margin, but we cannot ignore that Democrats have lost almost 500,000 voters since 2020. This state, I think, will be under that 15-point margin. However, I would still not put it in that likely margin. Now, probably the most important state on this map, and one that I'm putting in Trump's column in the tilt margin, is the state of Pennsylvania, where we see Democrats also losing 329,000 voters. Republicans have stayed exactly the same since 2020. In the past month, we can see Republicans gaining 21 and Democrats gaining 5. Republicans also now in the past few months have gained more voters registering in every single county, which has not happened in a very long time. I think Nebraska second will still go for Democrats by a small margin, as well as the states of New Hampshire and Maine. These two states have a pretty good, strong bias for Democrats, are a lot closer than their southern friends down here, but still enough to put them in that margin. And this is where I get the 312 to 226 map, a similar map that I put together in terms of polling, in terms of every other metric. This is the similar map that we're going to see. And it's supported by these numbers, which are looking really, really bad for Democrats. And these are numbers from every single state. This data comes directly from these states, and you can definitely check out the link. You can check out this Google Drive document, which shows all of those numbers over there. Similar story for this over here, published by Political Polls on Twitter. We can check out all these numbers over here and see how these numbers will add on to the map in 2024. I also want to point out that we are going to see a lot of new registrees coming up in the next month or two, because this is usually the time where people will register to vote. The election is coming up short, and usually a few months before, the Republican and Democrat registries will considerably go up. But it's the fact that Republicans have been gaining considerably, and I'd expect this number also to be going up, but it has pretty much collapsed. A big point of that is due to the state of California, where we see a lot of Democrats either leaving, or we see them just leaving the party and joining Republican or Democrats. So it's pretty interesting to see how California is going to vote this cycle. Last time I was D plus 29. I actually predict around D plus 20 to 23 this time around, a lot closer, and that will influence the popular vote a lot, maybe even being the sole factor in Trump winning the popular vote. But we're just going to have to wait and see. Either way, this will be the map, and this will be today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Put a comment down in the section below, and I'll check you guys out in the next one.